All right. SPSS has some great features for creating graphs. And when we begin to analyze data, one of the first things that we want to do is visually inspect our data. So let's assume that we wanted to build a histogram. This is very easy to do in SPSS. And in this video, we're going to show you how to create a histogram, very similar to creating other graphs. So let's say that we have our data here in data view. And here what we have a couple of different classes that say that we are in a kinesiology program and we want to look at the differences in final exam scores for two different classes. So we have class A and class B. And then as well for each class, for each individual, we have their cumulative GPA. So before we start building a graph, we need to go to our variable view and make sure that we have all of the parameters set up for each of our variables. So we have our variable name. Remember, we can't have any spaces there. We have the decimal set, often a good practice to have a more thorough label, especially when we're building graphs. And then the correct measures. So in this case, all of these measures are scale. So back here in our data view, what we want to do to build this graph, we want to go up here to graphs and then chart builder. So here out of our chart builder, we're going to go in, and in this case, reset this. So we might, like we said, we want to build a histogram. So we select histogram, and then you can either double click or you can click and drag up here to the chart preview. So in this case, on a simple histogram, stacked histogram frequency, polygon, or a population pyramid, we want to choose the simple histogram. So we're going to click and drag that up there. Close this. So in this case, let's say that we want to create a simple histogram for Class A's final exam scores. So we could click and drag. We could click and drag that variable over to our x-axis. And if we leave this axis blank, when we create this histogram, it's going to give us a frequency histogram. So let's go ahead and click OK. And SPSS is going to start building our chart. What I've done here is I've created a chart, and this is ideally what we're going to want our chart to look like. When we build a chart in SPSS, there's going to be certain default features, but in order to create a chart that's easy to read, has meaning, isn't too difficult to read, has appropriate labels, we might have to change some of the chart properties. So in this case, this is the histogram that SPSS has given us. Not too bad in the sense of our chart labels. So instead of it being over here, we had called our variable class A underscore exam. With that label, class A final exam scores, probably a little bit more descriptive of our data. In this case, frequency, that's a fine label for our y-axis. But when we start looking here at our x-axis, at the properties of this, we could really kind of clean up this data. So how are we going to clean that up in SPSS and make that histogram look something like this, where our intervals are in 5, the increments are set appropriately? Well, if we go in and, for example, if we click on our chart, if we double click, it's going to take us into that specific chart. And then we could click on, in this case, on our variables. And if we go up here, we could double click on any of these values, or you can single click and go up here. And in essence, what it's going to take us into, if we double clicked, is into the properties window. So let's open up the properties window, and then we go to scale. So let's say that we wanted to change the increments to 5, and we click apply. We can see exactly what that does here. And then if we close out of that, and let's assume that we wanted then to set our actual increments, we could either double click or we can go up here to the properties, but let's double click here. And it's going to pull up properties. And let's say we wanted to change the bins. So we would click custom, And then our interval width, we can possibly change that to 5 and apply. And so now visually our data is a little bit cleaner. Our data isn't skewed. We have on our y-axis our minimum and our maximum set up, so we're not setting this up on a frequency with our y-axis where our final increment is 10, and this skewing our data. Our major increment here, our highest value is 5, so we're going to set our y-axis there. But then our x-axis is certainly cleaner at this point, and visually our data makes much more sense with a chart set to these properties and these parameters. So that's just a really quick intro into how to do a histogram in SPSS. Hope you found that to be helpful.